Win big with new DRF All Access past performances. With one best-in-class product, you now get all 3 past performance formats. Go to DRF.com and use coupon code 1FREEPP for a free single card today.
Dan Illman and Ashley Mailloux taking a look at race number 9 at Laurel Park on Sunday. It's the second of 2 stakes races. Let's take a look at the field for the Twixt. Older fillies and mares going a 1-turn mile. There are going to be some scratches in this race. Todd Pletcher texted back on Friday morning, said Miss Justify will head for a stakes race at Churchill on Saturday. And Saddle Up Jessie just ran Wednesday in the Obeah, so I have a feeling she's not going to run here. That'll leave us with a field of 5 if Saddle Up Jessie doesn't wheel back on short notice. But there are some nice contenders, including Mystic Pleasure and Miss New York.
Yeah, these are the big 2 on paper, and I think the question between them is Mystic Pleasure, probably the best horse in the field, but from a win candidate perspective, maybe has some limitations at the mile distance. So then I think you look at a horse like the number 3 Miss New York, who I thought was visually very impressive last time out at Laurel Park, beat Continental Congress, seemed to really relish the distance. I think there's some upside with her, and her figures are just as competitive, and she's had some game second place finishes. We can't forget last year in this very race.
And she's a very versatile performer as it pertains to running style. We throw up the Timeform US pace projector. This pace projector will automatically update when scratches are made official on Sunday morning. Miss Justify out. Continental Congress likely to get to the front. Mystic Pleasure, I could see her tracking from the outside second, but I can also see Miss New York being a lot closer as well.
Yeah, and I think even with the scratches we mentioned, this will update, but I think that sort of changes the complexion of how far these fillies and mares will be apart. I think you're going to see a compact group. I don't think you're going to see anyone that's, say, 15 lengths off of it early on, especially at the mile and distance. I just think when you have a smaller field, riders are a little bit more mindful of that, and they try to keep their horses in a position where they're close enough to the pace setters.
With Miss Justify out, Continental Congress looks like the speed, and she's coming into this race in okay form. She was odds on in her most recent start against Miss New York. She did get loose on the lead in this race. Miss New York, in my opinion, was just simply better.
She was, and in Continental Congress, though, ran her race. She pretty much always wants to be forward, and they've tried different things where she's been rating. I just don't think she's as comfortable rating. And, she opened up her sizable lead of a couple lengths like she usually does, and she's second best here. I think, the good thing that she has is she obviously knows Laurel very well. The distance is not an issue for her. She's coming out of the mile and 16th race to a 1-turn mile. There's nothing really, to knock on her. The question is, if she has pressure early on, is that going to be what gets the best of her in the end? And sometimes that's what happens.
Miss New York was a stakes winner last year as a 3-year-old at Monmouth Park in the Boiling Springs. And I just wonder if she's racing herself back into shape. The race we just saw was her second start off of a lengthy layoff. Now third back, she might even be tighter. And I just think she's going to sit a good trip. Her last race that you mentioned that we saw, very impressive.
And it's just been fun to watch her development. Obviously, she came from overseas, turf, synthetic form, and then finally, since getting onto the dirt, she's just a different animal. I think she really takes to the surface quite nicely. Last year, she was a big second behind Interstate Daydream, who was a very nice filly at the time, and she got an 87 buyer for the runner-up. And I think just the fact that she's been lightly raced since then, and she was able to pop such a good race second time off the layoff, I think she has a ton of upside and probably gets the right trip in here where she's not too far off of it, and she has the pace setters in her sights early and can run them down.
Saddle Up Jessie is up next, although she's likely going to scratch after running in the Obeah on Wednesday. So we'll move to the 5 Princess Indy, who gets back to Laurel Park. And she's had a lot of success here. A winner 2 starts back in a second-level allowance race. She then ran at Charlestown last time out. It was a 2-turn race, the pink ribbon. She fell far behind early. I thought she ran okay. I think getting back to a more conventional surface helps. She will be facing older horses as the only 3-year-old in the field.
Yeah, 7A's at most tracks is 1 turn. Charlestown, very different ball game, and I agree with you. I thought it was an okay performance. She ran her race. It just wasn't good enough, especially for the winner. Free Like Girl's been a really, really nice filly to watch so far. And obviously, this daughter of Lord Nelson, her races as I go down the page at Laurel, she can get another one that could get the trip. It's very curious to see. I feel like, at Charlestown, she sort of ran off her feet early. They were just too fast on that 7A's configuration where you go to the races 2, 3, and 4 back. The fractions early on, they are a little bit more sensible. But I do have a feeling here, I don't want to say the fractions are going to be hot, but I think they're going to go faster early than they did 2 and 3 starts back. And I do think with that sort of logic, Princess Indy will be a little further back and she'll have to close from off of it.
She was a stakes winner going a two-turn mile last year at Monmouth. Goes out for Troy Singh, a former assistant to Claudio Gonzalez. Troy's had some success since going out on his own. Reclusive is the number 6. This one's won 3 of her last 4 starts. Certainly deserves an opportunity getting back into stakes action. Let's watch the Texas bred scoring at Parks last time out, going 7/8 of a mile. She has a lot of work to do, and she just rolls by them all in the final 1/8 of a mile. The question is she more of a closing sprinter type than one that can carry her ability a one-turn mile at Laurel with that long stretch?
We'll see. It's very, I don't know, confusing when you look at her. We're looking at her at Parks. You mentioned she's a Texas bred, and when you go to most of her races, they've been in Texas. But in her last 2, they decided to dabble, and it's certainly been worthwhile. She was able to win at Monmouth, and then she was able to win at Parks, and she's done it quite easily. And maybe her figures are just a tad softer than others in here. I just wonder if it's the case of, okay, she's going to stretch out. She's trying something new. The fractions in those races have been quite quick, and I think that's why she just hasn't been fast enough early, and she's closing from typically last or near last in those races. And I think stretching out, she could be a little bit closer. And if she's able to show a turn of foot like she has in the past, she might be a big price to use underneath. I think the win might be a little out of her reach, especially talking about the 3 and the 7 in this field. But I think there's a case to maybe be made for using her underneath.
These connections might have gotten a bargain with the 7 Mystic Pleasure. They purchased her for $110,000 in January. A very well-bred daughter of Good Magic, had a grade 2 stakes winner, Disposable Pleasure, and they've made their money back, and she's already valuable as a broodmare thanks to her stakes placing last time in the Groupie Doll. She took advantage of that inside post. Of course, at Ellis Park, they have the chute with the quick left turn, and breaking from the rail certainly helped Mystic Pleasure get to the lead. She might have idled a little bit in front, but she tried hard all the way down to the wire.
She has been very good in some of her performances. And I don't want to say that the mile is too far for her. She's been able to win at 7.5 on the dirt, which most horses don't ever get to try, right, Dan? 7.5 is a very weird distance that you get at Churchill. But last time out, you talked about the configuration at Ellis Park. I thought she was a good third in there, but she wasn't able to get it done. I think looking at her races, 2 starts back at 6.5, she was comfortable closing. I just wonder at these longer distances if she needs to be quite forward. And for her sake, I think the scratch of the 1 Miss Justify is huge and bodes well for her. She gets a compact field in here. Maybe she just is the best horse on paper, but there's just part of me that wants to play against her.
Let's take a look at our top selections for the Twixt. It's $100,000 on Sunday. We're both going to go with Miss New York. I just think she's improving with each and every start off the layoff, and I think she's going to trip out in here. I think the 3 and the 7 are the top contenders, and that's where we're going with our exacta.
Yeah, and I think we both have a similar opinion here. We're going to try to beat the 7 in here. If she wins again, wouldn't it be shocked? But I do agree with you with Miss New York. I think she's getting into form. I was very impressed with her last year in the Twixt. She was able to run well off that freshening, and now she's had 2 consecutive starts now, or only 2 in 2024. Don't think she wanted any part of the 6.5 furlongs at Parks. I think she needed a race, and just to see how she was able to win so nicely last time out, I was very impressed with her. So that's why I made her my top pick.
3762 for Ashley, 3752 for me. We'll see if Miss New York can do it in Maryland again in Sunday's Twixt, the second of 2 stakes races at Laurel. Best of luck.
Hey, buddy. Let me tell you something. If you really enjoyed this great content, just click the like and subscribe button right here. And if you enjoy the race of the day, stakes previews and lots more starring me, please click right here. You're not gonna regret it.